Please help me welcome Jeff Skversky.
It's great to be here. I want to thank everyone for having me out here to talk about Bensalem. I especially want to thank all the teachers I had over the years, especially the ones that wrote that I was disruptive in my report card. That was extremely fun taking those home. You know, I think about, and people ask me all the time, how did I end up on Channel 6 growing up here in Bensalem? Like many of you, I'm sure, is watching the show and watching the news for as long as you can remember. And sometimes I wonder, too, how did I in the world end up here? These days I sit next to Jim Gardner. And I remember the first time sitting down next to Jim and Dave Roberts thinking, what am I doing? What in the world is a kid from Bensalem? How did I end up here? What possibly went wrong? But, you know, I think back to how I got started, and to be honest, to be really honest, it all started with the audio-visual program at Bensalem High School 20 years ago. And I really think that changed my life. When I was at Bensalem High School, I didn't really know what I per se wanted to do when I first got to Bensalem High School in 9th grade. And I said to myself, okay, well, I like to talk, disruptive in class apparently, and I like sports, so let's put that combination together. And I entered the audio-visual program about 20 years ago, so my junior year, and it just felt right. Everything felt natural for me. And at Bensalem High School, it started for me. I was making videos. I was doing play-by-play of the basketball team. I was making soccer, football, basketball videos, and I remember putting those together. And Dr. Zwern, who used to be at the school, I would say is one of the most influential people in my entire career. He started everything for me and really helped me from the ground up. And by the time I went to college, I felt a lot more prepared and a lot more ahead of the game than I think every other student that was coming in here saying the same thing, that they wanted to be a sports announcer one day. They wanted to be on the news. And it's interesting. I haven't told a lot of people this, and a lot of people don't know this about me because it's not something I like to talk about per se, but I think since we're kind of in this education thing, when I was younger, I had a really bad reading comprehension problem. I mean, it was really bad, and I remember getting help. I remember one of my teachers, Mrs. Halperin, really worked at it with me. And I remember in Benjamin Rush and Snyder and Bensalem High School, teachers would call upon me to read out loud as they do in class. And I remember I was always very nervous and embarrassed sometimes to read, just very nervous. I wouldn't sound good when I'm reading. And I had trouble a lot of times remembering the things I would read. And now I get paid to read, so it's... still can't remember everything, but that to me is, that transformation, there's so many things you grow up, when you grow up, you're not good at. I mean, you have to learn everything from scratch. And I remember as a kid, I was so bad at reading, and it was such a struggle for me. And now it's all I do is read and read and read and read. And I remember the work I put into it, and it was hard. When you're not good at something and you're failing at something, it was really, really difficult. And I think at a young age, even though I didn't realize it at the time, looking back, I could honestly say going through that struggle of the fear of getting called upon in class to read out loud was one of my biggest fears. And now I do it all day long, every day. To think back at that, I think that helped prepare me for the struggle and the career path of getting, for me, which is my dream job, which is working at Channel 6 and being a sportscaster. When I entered the audio-visual program, it changed my life. Because at that point I realized, hey, there is something that I'm interested in. And it was hard for me in class to pay attention. I remember as a kid I have ADD, my mind's racing, it's all over the place. And I remember, for whatever reason, being in that class just focused me. You know, the first ever person I ever interviewed on camera was Chris Mullen, which is Mr. Mullen, who's his brother, who's now the basketball coach. He was an assistant at the time. And Chris Mullen was the first person I ever interviewed. And I think I was a junior at Bensalem, and I did it for OTN. And I remember I was very nervous. I mean, this guy is a 4 or 5-time NBA All-Star. He's on the Olympic team. I mean, this guy is one of the best basketball players in the business. And he was coming to talk to the Bensalem basketball team as a favor to his brother. And I remember hearing about it, and I remember in my head saying, well, that would be a good story for our TV show for OTN. Here's this big NBA star over at Armstrong where they used to practice and play games. And I went over there and I interviewed him. We played it on the news and we played it on the local cable access channel. And I remember then it kind of started clicking for me that, you know what, this feels kind of right. I wasn't any good at it, but it felt somewhat right. For me, it all started here. And I was able to overcome the reading comprehension, and I found different ways to learn from that, and found different ways to get through that. I mean, I still have days now where I'm reading articles, or I'm reading something online, or in the newspaper, or wherever, and I was like, I missed that, let me go back, or I'll highlight it. I used to in newspapers, when I was looking up information and different things, for years, I would write all over the newspaper. And I remember when I interned at Channel 6, when I was in college, I remember looking at Gary Papa's desk, and he had all these newspapers and all sorts of nonsense scribbled all over the place, and numbers and things circled. And, you know, Gary was a lot like that too. I think your mind's kind of all over the place, kind of running the ADD kind of thing, maybe a little bit of the reading comprehension, and just finding ways to connect. And whether you grew up with a learning disability, whether you grew up struggling with math or whatever it is, I think there's ways to find a way to connect with the material, because everybody as you can attest from your kids or yourself, learn a different way. So for me, when I left Bensalem, getting out of Temple University, I have to tell you, I was ahead of the game by 2 years easily. Calling all the basketball games and football games, I went right into Temple, and I was able to cover the Phillies, the Flyers, the Eagles, and Sixers for our campus radio station. So I did TV, I did radio, I wrote for the newspaper at Temple University, and I felt like I was ahead of the game. And I took it very seriously. I said, okay, this is something I can connect with. Nothing else in high school, for me, or even in elementary school or middle school, I really felt like I could connect with. But for whatever reason, the TV, the journalism, the media stuff really connected with me. And I just went for it. And I'm talking about, I'm in class all day long, 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. I would go to an internship. I was interning at different periods at Comcast Sportsnet, at Channel 17, and at Channel 6. And I remember thinking, hey, I just want to be one of those guys. And I just started sending out demo tapes as I was leaving Temple University. Like I said, I was doing TV, radio, newspaper, sending out demo tapes. I sent out about 100 demo tapes. Nothing, not a single response, 0. And then I sent out about 50 more, so I'm at 150. And I get a call from Fargo, North Dakota, which sounds just pleasant, especially in December. So I remember thinking, I really don't want to go to Fargo, North Dakota. And Gary Papa had said to me, he was my mentor, when we started becoming very friendly, said to me, just take it. He said, you'll be there a year, and then you'll get out of there. It doesn't matter, just take it. So I accepted on the phone. And then the next day I got offered a job at the ABC station in Macon, Georgia, which is a startup ABC station. They had no ABC News down there. It's a startup TV station. I went down to Macon, Georgia. My parents helped me move down there. So after sending out 150 tapes, I'm excited to start this journey of being on television. And I get down there and they tell me, hey, by the way, just to let you know, we ran out of money. We're not going to be doing the weekend news anymore. I'm supposed to be the weekend sports announcer. He said, hey, we ran out of money, so yeah, sorry. I said, well, why are we doing it? Well, you could be a cameraman, or I don't know. So imagine like picking up everything. You don't really have any money. When you think about we're out of school, you don't really have much money. And you move down to Macon, Georgia. you have an apartment, you have a furnished apartment. It was one of the most devastating points of my career, and it just started. I just finished Temple University. And I remember talking to Drs. Wern, I remember talking to different people in college and mentors of mine. A lot of them said to me, this is what it is. And I remember I thought back to things that I learned at Bensalem High School doing OTN. And it's not going to go well. In fact, most of the time it's not going to go well. Most of the time, whether you're on TV, whether it's behind the scenes, things are not going to go well. It's how you handle it on the fly. I got a job in Atlantic City at the NBC station, and to me, that was a dream I consider first job. And I left Macon after 6 weeks, and I started working in Atlantic City, and it was great. I was doing a little bit of Eagles coverage, a little bit covering the Phillies, and we covered a lot of minor league stuff, and you kind of get your feet wet, where you can make mistakes, you can just be flat out bad on television, and mumble and stutter all over the place, even more than I do now on Channel 6. And it's okay, it's fine. And then from there, I wanted to move up. And the process is, I try to compare it to minor league baseball, where you start off in the minors and you work your way up, single A, double A, triple A, and so on and so forth. So from there, I went to Syracuse, and I get to Syracuse, and it's just flat out awful. It's just the worst job ever. It's terrible. The money's bad, it's cold, it snows every day, and I kept thinking to myself, in my dreams, I want to work at Channel 6. I want to do this, I can put up with this for a few years. You're away from home, you don't really know anyone, you don't have a lot of friends, you're in a different place, and you're learning the teams, you're learning the coaches, you're learning the PR people, and you're starting from scratch. And I sent out from there took me about 300 demo tapes, 300 more tapes, where I would put together a highlight reel of my best material, I would send it out, and just pray that somebody would call me and offer me a job, maybe. And I sent out 300 tapes, and not a single word, not a peep. So at this point, I'm at about 450 tapes into my career, and about a year and a half, no, I'm sorry, about 4 years into my career, I'm about 450 tapes in, and I have one call, one job, and that's been it. And I send out more tapes and more tapes and more tapes. And finally I get a job in St. Louis, which really started to feel like, okay, well this might happen here, where this is going to turn into something okay. Because St. Louis is considered a big market. It's a major league market with an NFL team, a major league team. And I was working out in St. Louis and covering major league stuff. It felt great. Covering, as we heard, the World Series, and covering NFL teams, traveling with teams. It started to feel like a job in Philadelphia for me, where, okay, this is going to prepare me to come home one day. So I continued to send out demo tapes, and I continued to want to move up in the business. I was in St. Louis for about 2 years. I was close a few times to some different jobs here in Philadelphia. And about 2008, when the market crashed, and the economy tanked, I got laid off in St. Louis. And I had been very close to a few jobs, as I said, here in Philadelphia. And again, devastating. I thought back to the Macon situation. I thought back to working in Macon, Georgia, and the ups and downs of working in this business that I wanted to do so much. And at that point, I said to myself, well, I can sit here in St. Louis with no job, or I can try to make something happen and hustle. And I remember thinking just back to high school. And I remember conversations I had with Drs. Wern telling me about, hey, listen, most people don't make it. And whether you've made it this far, whether you're going to make it and get a job on the news in Philadelphia one day, whatever it is, you just got to keep fighting through it and keep getting through it. So I decided when I was in St. Louis, and after I got laid off, I left my apartment out there and I just flew home. And I started basically banging on news directors' doors in New York, and Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington. And when I got laid off in July of 2008, I made a decision. I said, okay, am I going to sit here and stand pat, or am I going to continue to hustle and make something out of nothing? At this point, I had nothing. And I continued to send out tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes and tapes. Nothing. So I started freelancing. I got some work in Baltimore, got some work in Washington, I started doing some radio updates on 97.5 here with Mike Missinelli. And all of a sudden I was working 7 days a week. One day I was working at 97.5, another day I was in Baltimore, another day I was in Washington, working at different TV stations. All sorts, I'm all over the place, up and down I-95. And then I started freelancing at Fox 29. And the news director at Fox 29 at the time had been a news director in St. Louis at another station who I got in contact with. And I really try to think outside of the box. Okay, I'm in a bad situation, I'm laid off, I don't know when I'm going to get work again as far as getting another on-air sportscasting job. And I said, okay, well, what am I going to do? Again, I can sit here and stand pat, or I can make my own breaks. And I started doing that. And I remember from my internship at Channel 6, when I worked there in college and interned, I called up a lot of people I'd stayed in contact with, and they said, you know, we're going to have an opening here. We've seen you on Fox. We've seen your demo tape. The news director had remembered me from when I was an intern and said, okay, we'd like to bring you in for an interview. And to me, at that point, I was like, this is it. This is everything I've worked at since the time I was at Bensalem, since the time I walked in on OTN and calling basketball and football games. This has prepared me for my dream job. And as you know, now I got the job. And to me, that felt like a vindication for all the hard work, everything you put into, everyone telling you, hey, it's not going to work out, and all the ups and downs of the day-to-day, how tough it is. And at the point when I got the job at Channel 6, I had sent out 1,000 demo tapes. I mean, you think about the process of putting together a highlight reel of your work over the course of 6-7 years, 1,000 demo tapes, back and forth to the post office, making labels and stuff like that. So that's kind of been the process to get to Channel 6. And now people ask me, hey, what do you want to do next? I really just don't want to mess this up. Try not to screw this up too much. But that's kind of been the career process for me. And I thought about it the other day. I had an intern call me and ask me for some advice and different things, and saying, hey, he's been at this a while and it hasn't really worked for him. And I just said to myself, you know what, I've been at this 20 years. I really have. I've been at this for 20 years. So it's going to happen at different points for different people. And I really do credit the work ethic and going back to the audio-visual program that I was able to just gain so much out of here at Bensalem High School. And I really can't thank the ability to have that program enough and what Dr. Warren did for me. And I've met up with him a few times. We've had lunch. We've talked about it. So I just want to thank you guys for having me out tonight. And I really appreciate you guys watching and listening. I hope I didn't bore everyone too much and put anyone to sleep or whatever. So, well, thanks for your time.